guys, welcome back to the next episode of Summer of Sega. If you missed yesterday's episode, I went and talked about a whole bunch of Sega Saturn games that I just purchased within the last 5 or 6 months and only had a limited experience with, kind of giving you my first impressions about the games and showing you some pretty interesting imports. And today I'm going to be going ahead and doing the same type of video with the Dreamcast. If you missed out on that Sega Saturn video, go ahead and check that out. I'm going to put the link below for that. First up for the Dreamcast is Exodus Guilty Neos. This is an import for the Sega Dreamcast, and it's a very fascinating, so far, visual novel. It actually has 3 scenarios, which is something I really like. One that takes place in sort of present time, one that is in far into the future, and one that is in the past. And so far I'm having a lot of fun with it. I've tried a little bit of each scenario. I haven't really gotten too far into it. So far I am liking the characters, and I am liking the dialogue. Seems very sort of witty, almost comical many times, and the best thing about it so far for me though is I love the visual style. I'll show you a lot of the opening, really gives you a good hint of the different types of visuals in each of the different scenarios, and I love the way it looks. I'm liking the way the story is unfolding so far as I've gotten, and I'm enjoying the music. Another thing that I like is frequently in this type of digital comic or visual novel style, there's a definite flow to the story without a whole lot of choice. Occasionally there's more than in others, but in this one there's a lot of moving around by hitting directional arrows in the corners, like a lot of old point-and-click adventures. Reminds me a little bit of moving around in the Deep Space Nine Homberger, if you saw my review for that. And it seems like there's a little bit more exploration in this one than in a lot of other games of its type. Next on the list is Biohazard, or Resident Evil, Code Veronica, and this is the Japanese Dreamcast version with the really cool sort of crimson sleeve here, and then you have the actual game, front cover there. Now, this one somehow passed me by back in the day. I played Resident Evil 2 was the first one that I played that on PS1 and on the N64. Then I played Resident Evil 3, and then finally went back to playing Resident Evil 1. I played the horrendous Resident Evil Survivor, and then eventually moved on to Resident Evil 4. And somehow, I'm not sure why, I missed out on Code Veronica or the Code Veronica X on PS2 and GameCube. And I'm really liking it so far. I've heard a lot of great things about it. Some people dislike it, some people it's their favorite Resident Evil. It seems to be a little more polarizing than some of the other ones. For instance, Resident Evil 2 seems to have pretty universal praise. And Code Veronica, though, I'm really liking, and the fact that it is really the true Resident Evil 3, it's not the side story that Resident Evil 3 was in the PS1, I'm looking really forward into getting to know more of the story of it. And so far, just a couple hours in, really liking it, really liking the, obviously, I have issue with some of the Resident Evil game mechanics on some of the old games. I really enjoy them, but it takes me a while to get used to the sort of clunky tank control style, because I don't play a ton of games with that style of gameplay. I'm not a huge survival horror fan, so every time I get into a new Resident Evil, I typically will, or that type of game, like Dino Crisis, whatever, I might play the first hour or so, and then just restart it with a new game, just so I'm starting fresh with getting used to that style of gameplay. Really liking it so far. I've heard a lot about the difficulty of it, though, saying that it is one of, if not the hardest one in the Resident Evil series, and so far I haven't really seen that. It doesn't feel harder to me than a lot of others, but who knows, maybe it'll come and slap me in the face after the first couple hours here. Really liking it. It's a lot of fun, and it is one where if you're having trouble finding the English version for the Dreamcast specifically, I mean the PS2 and GameCube version are pretty common, there isn't a whole lot of difference between the Japanese version. All the voice work is done in English, and it's really just coming down to any of the text is in Japanese. So it's not a huge, it has it's a little more English friendly than a lot of other imports. So if you really want to find that game and you find it cheaper, go ahead and grab it. And I really, really like the sleeve that it came in. I'm going to show you that again here. I really enjoy this collector's edition. It's not a bunch of huge extras. It's really just the game with a sleeve. But to me, it just looks so much prettier on the shelf, and it's nice having this little protective sleeve for it. Next is the King of Fighters Dream Match 99. And while I do like 2D fighters, I tend to prefer 3D fighters. It all depends. I like some of the older X-Men fighting games. I like Guilty Gear is really good. As far as 2D fighting games, though, for some reason I've never gotten into the King of Fighters. No idea why. I mean, I'm not the biggest SNK or Neo Geo fan, but at the same time, while I've enjoyed them, I've just never been a massive fan of King of Fighters. This one, though, particularly interested me just because of a very kind of odd mechanic here. I'll show you a little clip here. Yeah, if I can get the glare, at least. You can actually use this game along with the Neo Geo Pocket version of King of Fighters R2. There was an odd little peripheral where you could hook up your Neo Geo Pocket Color to your Dreamcast for, I think, just a handful of games. It might have been like 3 games. It's not a whole lot. But I really wanted to get a King of Fighters game for the Dreamcast, and I chose this one specifically because of the link up to the Sega Dreamcast, which I think it just unlocks like another character or something. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but just the fact that it has this cool interaction that's unique to the Dreamcast meant that this was the version for me. So far, my impressions, it's actually my favorite King of Fighters that I've played. I've played maybe 4 or 5 of them over the years between the arcades and a couple on PS1. This is the first one I played on the Dreamcast, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I like the character selection, and I think I might actually start giving this series more of a second chance. Like I said, for some reason I've just never gotten into a lot of the SNK Neo Geo 2D fighters, but I think I might go back and start doing that after playing this. I'm really having a great time with it. Next is Death Crimson OX, or Death Crimson Ox as some people refer to it, and this is actually a sequel to a Japan-only Sega Saturn light gun game, similar to The House of the Dead. This is a lot of fun for the Dreamcast. Pick it up. You can use a controller or use the light gun. Light gun's obviously preferable, but it actually works fairly well with the controller. You can really adjust the sensitivity nicely. It is very fast and action-paced. I'd say it's definitely has a much faster pace than something like House of the Dead. But it's a lot of fun. It's a great arcade shooter. If you really like light gun games, this is one of the best on the Sega Dreamcast. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's challenging and fun, and it has that same House of the Dead style hilarious story. The story is absurd and comical, but it actually goes much deeper into the storyline than something like The House of the Dead or Virtua Cop. It has far more story sequences, and they tend to be a little bit longer. So I kind of found myself actually really getting into that ridiculous sort of 80s B-movie style comical storyline that went along with the game, and it gave it so much more character than a lot of other games of its type. Now, as you know, I just recently started getting into Sakura Taisen, Sakura Wars for the Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast, and the first game I got was 3, and was able to beat that. I picked up 1, and I also picked up 4 for the Dreamcast. And after beating 3, I immediately put in 4 just to kind of check it out and go through the first couple hours. And my first impressions of this one, I'm really loving it so far. It is such an interesting game that I'm kind of setting it aside, though, because the feeling that I got playing through the first couple of hours, and then I stopped and tried to read up about it, and I was correct in that first impression, it is more of an homage to the first 3 games, to the, even the spin-offs. It's kind of an homage to the series leading up to number 4, and to all the Sega fans, it's kind of like a big thank you, rather than a huge standalone game. It is, obviously a standalone brand new story. It is a sequel to 3, but it is much shorter. It's been criticized constantly, I see online, for being maybe half as long as a lot of the other ones in the series, and it is something where everyone starts coming together. All these characters from the first 2 games show up in Paris from the scene of the 3rd game, and it's, to me, so far, it really has that feeling of being kind of a fan service thank you with a good enough story. And while that doesn't sound fantastic, so far just in the first couple hours, presentation-wise, it is absolutely on par with everything else. I actually enjoyed the opening segment of this one better than 1 and 3. I'm liking the interaction between all the characters I know from 3 and the characters that I'm just getting to know from 1. And gameplay-wise, it's just as good as 3. It's practically identical. So far, it seems like a great game that like I said, am putting off for now because I feel like I'll really appreciate it and I'll really enjoy it if it's my sort of capstone for the series, if it's that last one that I experience.